If Latin America were united into a single country, it would be the most powerful country in the world. We'd be so rich that North Americans would start to illegally immigrate here. We would have over 660 million people spread across 8.1 million square miles. To put it in perspective, Russia has about 144 million people, and that's still nowhere near the size of what a united Latin America could offer. So does that mean that we're going to be able to kick their asses and compete with the big dogs like the United States or China? The economic potential of a united Latin America. The short answer is no. Russia, for instance, has a stockpile of 5,580 nuclear warheads, almost half the global stockpile. That's enough to wipe out a country like ours in a heartbeat. And the same could be said for other powerful nations like the United States and China, each with their own massive military power. However, economically, we could become one of the most powerful countries ever. With so many resources, we could surpass any nation in the next few decades. We would have the largest oil reserves in the world. And when I say largest, I mean it. Because they're not in the Middle East, they're not in North America, or they're not in Russia. They're right down there in Venezuela, just waiting to be tapped. However, to fully capitalize on these resources, we're going to have to kick out Maduro out of the continent, throw away the key. Now, this hypothetical nation could only work by having a decent ruler. We can't become the biggest country in the world with a tyrant in charge. We need a functional democracy. So, I've analyzed each of the region's economies, and I found this. Our economies in Latin America are in such a miserable state because of socialism. Just look at how well Panama has done since embracing capitalism. Its beaches are packed with tourists, and it boasts the most skyscrapers of any city in Latin America. Now you compare that to Cuba, which has been under a communist regime for over 60 years, and the difference is night and day. While Panama is thriving, the streets in Cuba are falling apart, and their people are starving. The average Cuban survives on less than $1.90 a day. That's a staggering 88% of the population that lives in extreme poverty. Socialism versus capitalism, the harsh reality. I'm sure some people will jump in the comments and argue that Cuba is not a strictly communist country, but rather a socialist one. Yet, the results are the same. Millions have suffered under a system that has time and time again proven that it just simply doesn't work. And this is just not my opinion. It's a fact backed by history, and one of the clearest examples is the stark contrast between East and West Germany during the Cold War. The communist East was plagued by poverty and stagnation, while the capitalist West thrived and soared toward prosperity. However, while the story in Germany had a happy ending, things did not end well in Latin America. If after walking the streets of Cuba, you still refuse to accept the truth, at least have the dignity to remain silent out of respect for the thousands of Cubans who have died trying to escape their country. Latin America's hidden wealth. Okay, now let's talk about the riches in Latin America. If we united as a country, the resources at our disposal will be staggering. Besides the massive oil reserves in Venezuela, we would have the Lithium Triangle made up of Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia, which holds 53% of the world's lithium reserves. Lithium is key for the global tech market, especially electric car batteries, so that alone will give us incredible leverage. On the other hand, Brazil is a major player in nickel production, and Peru and Mexico are among the world's top silver producers. In 2019, Latin America was responsible for more than half of the world's silver production. And just a year after that, Brazil became the second largest producer of iron ore globally, with nearly 5 billion metric tons. So yeah, we will be swimming in money. More than just resources, a global superpower. Beyond minerals, we also have the largest freshwater reserves on the planet, courtesy of the Amazon. It holds 30% of the world's freshwater supply. In addition, we control major agricultural exports, such as soy, corn, and meat. Therefore, if Latin America were to disappear tomorrow, the world would starve. With a GDP of over $6.5 trillion, we will become the third largest economy in the world, only behind the US and China. Our ability to control global meat, coffee, and sugar production would make us the world's breadbasket. Imagine a region where every country works together to dominate industries like this. With our large population, tourism would explode too. With the right infrastructure in place, travel from Mexico to Colombia would be easier than ever. You could take a train from one country to the next, just like any other day in the European Union. Sure, we might not have nuclear weapons, but with nearly 3 million active soldiers, we'll still have a formidable defense against any invaders. And if we invested in sustainable energy sources like solar and wind, we could become a global powerhouse. At that point, we wouldn't need the US or Europe. They'll need us. We could stop the dollar from being the most powerful currency and make our own currency. And this currency would dominate the market. But to make this happen, we need one more thing: a capital city. Just think about the possibilities if Latin America were united. Which city would be the best choice to lead it? I'm gonna share my top 2 picks at the end of the video. Corruption, the biggest obstacle. Now that we've covered the basics, let's talk about the more urgent issue: corruption. Politicians in Latin America are notoriously corrupt. If we let them run this hypothetical united country, they'll destroy everything in their path, just like they've done to the economies of their own nations. That's why we need a strong, honest leader who can bring real change. And I personally think Nayib Bukele from El Salvador will be a great candidate because he's young, he's smart, he turned his country around. Like, it used to be one of the most dangerous countries in the world, and now it's just one of the safest countries in just a few years. But we don't just need one leader, we need a whole team of upright politicians to lead us forward. We're talking about unifying many different governments, cultures, and economies. So it won't be easy. The disparities are huge. The strength of Latin America's people. One of Latin America's greatest strengths is the people. We're smart, intelligent, hardworking, and always looking for ways to get ahead. We don't wait around for a savior. We cross borders and seek opportunities everywhere. Unfortunately, a lot of that talent is getting lost in other countries. And let's not sugarcoat it. North America benefits from the people we're losing. Now, imagine if we could retain all that talent. Imagine if all the workers, scientists, and brilliant minds from Latin America felt appreciated and rewarded enough to return. We could become an economic superpower in less than a decade. It's no coincidence that Latin America excelled in music, sports, and other fields. We don't let ourselves get bogged down by victimhood. Instead, we keep pushing forward, and that's why we're the ones making waves globally. But if we combine our work ethic with the financial knowledge North Americans have mastered, we'd be unstoppable. We already have everything we need to succeed: fertile land, energy reserves, a huge growing population. All we need now is to learn how to use those resources wisely. Unfortunately, as long as we keep splitting ourselves over petty things like sports rivalries or arguing about who invented what dish, which, by the way, if you like arepas are from Venezuela, we'll never reach our full potential. These pointless divisions are not just random, they're a part of a bigger plan to keep Latin America struggling. While we argue over trivial things, other nations are taking our oil, gas, and minerals. That's why we need to be smarter and more united than ever, because once the rest of the world runs out of resources, they'll come straight for ours. Yes, Latin America is a tough place to live, but it's also a beautiful place worth defending. We are a society of warriors, just like Spartans were in their time. And it's these very struggles that could turn Latin America into the next superpower. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what some imaginary lines on a map say. We are one living nation. However, if Latin America were to unite under one flag, where should the capital be? Me personally, I'm leaning towards San Jose, Costa Rica, or Panama City, because both are right in the heart of the continent. But I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments. This is Chris, Bad Hombres TV. I'll see you next time.